AI is the trigger word that is everywhere at the moment. You're seeing it on LinkedIn, you're seeing it on ads, you know you need to be using it, but you don't know where to start. In this video, me and Daniel Priestley are going to be going through how you can use AI to make money. So AI we're seeing is absolutely everywhere, and I just want to know how you're using it in your businesses and what you think other entrepreneurs watching this and how they can actually use it to make more money.
So I've got multiple AI startups that are software companies, that are agencies. I'm using it across businesses that do consulting services, all of that sort of stuff. Here's the first principle. The principle number one is that every single business on the planet is suddenly inefficient. Every business is crawling when it could be running because there's a new technology that is now available that is making all businesses better, faster, cheaper with more emotional benefits. This is not dissimilar. Well, it's actually bigger, an extension of what it was like when all of a sudden every business could use email, or every business could use the phone, or every business could have cloud computing. Suddenly every single business could be running more efficiently if only it was using those tools and that technologies. The only difference this time is it's way bigger and way more powerful than ever before. So this is the biggest trend that's ever hit in my lifetime, bigger than the internet, bigger than cloud computing, bigger than social media. It is intelligence as a service. Like it's human level intelligence that comes flowing through incredibly cheap. So you can pick any business anywhere and say that business is inefficient. It could be better, faster, cheaper with more emotional benefits if I embed AI.
So if we then compare that to when you started, 2005, I think you said was when you...
2002 was my first
2002,
company.
your first company. What sort of things do you even think you'd be able to use AI for then that you couldn't be able to? Like, what are the things that you grinded out that you now think, right, we wouldn't even know we're born?
Well, there's a lot, because back then you used to run ads in the newspaper, and I used to even fax broadcast and do fax machine like messages to people and all sorts of stuff. So incredibly slow, incredibly expensive, lots and lots of people required to get everything done. Cost to generate a lead was about $100 per lead. Essentially there are two hard problems that every business has to solve, which is speed to value, speed to market. Speed to value is once you have a customer, how quickly can you solve a problem or deliver an outcome that they're really thrilled about? And businesses that do faster speed to value get more referrals, they get more new customers, they can charge more. People love you for that. So that's called speed to value. And the other one is speed to market, which is your ability to tell people that you can do that. So telling your story, getting people to know that you exist, getting people to know what it is you solve, what problem that you fix, what outcome you deliver. Way that you had to solve all problems in the past was either by throwing people at it or throwing software at it. And now there's this third thing, which is throw intelligence at it. And you have to imagine that, essentially, if you could hire people for 1 cent an hour, what would you hire people to? If there was an infinite number of smart people who were happy to work for 1 cent an hour, then what would you hire them to do?
What portion of the business?
Yeah. So you would hire them to do speed to value and speed to market. So on the speed to market side of things, you would create all sorts of social media campaigns. You would create customized campaigns just deliberately to reach out to certain individuals, and you would capture their attention, and you would build email campaigns that, do follow-up. You would have people messaging them in a really thoughtful, timely way. So there's all sorts of things that you would be doing. You would create animations, you would create diagrams, you'd hire researchers who could research interesting facts and figures that would back up the reason that you're valuable and that would share latest best practices. Given that AI can do all of that for 1 cent, you basically throw all of that at it. And then speed to value is you say, okay, what are all the problems that my client is trying to solve? And let me throw intelligence at it. So how quickly can I get them more, better, faster, cheaper, nicer, less risk, all using AI? Now, you may not know even how to do that. You can ask AI. You can actually say, I'm not quite sure that I can do with AI to create value for my client.
I think a lot of entrepreneurs are scared that they're going to lose their human. They're going to lose their voice and their personality in their business. And a lot of businesses have personality in them. So how can you mitigate that risk of just people can tell when scripts are AI, people can tell when the follow-ups are AI. So you're not suggesting that you just move the whole business to AI. You're actually saying the people who use AI are going to be the ones who go above.
Like, let's say I hired graduates who are second year out of university, super smart. They're there to research, they're there to help. Let them run the business and I would add nothing to what they do. And that's crazy. That's not the approach. You would have all these graduates who are working with you, but then you would add your additional layer. Imagine a bakery, and the bakery has a new machine that creates sponge cake. And the sponge cake, it used to take you 4 hours a day to make the sponge cake. But if you put sponge cake out in the window, no one buys generic sponge cake. If it's beautifully iced with people's name on it and you actually go out there and talk to customers and tell them people, then they want to buy it. So AI produces the sponge cake. Your job is to put the icing on the cake that is your unique way of doing it, and your job is to connect with the customers. When people say I'm worried about losing the human side, well, the truth is the Industrial Revolution was dehumanizing, and all of the jobs that came out of the Industrial Revolution were designed to make you a cog in the machine, to do repeatable work over and over and over again. And it was designed to make your work simple, logical, repeatable, dehumanizing. And AI actually frees you up to do the most human work. It's literally, we're not used to the idea that now the work is having fun on podcasts, going out and meeting clients, taking people on a boat. You know, like some of the stuff in the last 12 months that I'm doing because of AI, I took 30 clients to Necker Island to hang out with Richard Branson. That's now part of my work.
Let's take that scenario then. How are you using AI in that instance?
Well, because I don't have to be doing anything else. AI is doing it. AI's just freed me up so that I can spend a week on Necker Island with my top clients, creating incredible memories.
With the work purists, the one who say, no, you've got to be sitting there on a desk from 9 to 7, let's say Morgan Stanley, companies like that, you've got to be in the office all the time. How do you kind of see those big corporates, the ones with 50,000 employees, how are they going to adapt to this?
If we went back 200 years ago, 90% of people worked on farms. Like everyone was a farmer, and you had to plow the field by hand or with a donkey. And then tractors came along, and 2 kids with a tractor license could go up and down and up and down and up and down, plow the field, and they would do the work of 80 people, and it was all done in a couple of days, and everyone had to come off the farm and go find something else to do because it could all be done by a tractor. And it's like, oh, what do you say about the people who still run the farm with people with a hand plow? It's like, okay, good luck to you. The world moves on. So people who say, oh, my job is to be at the desk in front of a screen for 9 hours a day, and that's the most valuable thing I can do. You are plowing the field by hand, buddy. Tractor has already been invented. It's only a matter of time.
So if you're you're a mid-cap company, you've got a few $100,000 a year in spare for R&D, would you hire a chief intelligent AI?
Yeah, I'd bring in people who really see the vision with AI and who can shape culture in that way. I'd start extracting as much data that you have access to from your organization. Every conversation gets recorded and transcribed. Every sales meeting, the notes go into the system. You're building a context layer, and you're going to use that with the tools.
I just know that if Ali Abdal was watching this, been talking about second brain for probably the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And now the second brain has gone from a written second brain into a complete, I'll upload everything. And can you remind me of the point that I made 5 years ago when I was sitting the podcast and doing this and doing that? And then can you use that as context when we're building future scripts?
That's it.
And I think where a lot of people are, let's go the other end of the spectrum. Let's say you're a low skilled worker. You're worried that AI is going to come for your business. Let's say, you work in Tesco and you've now seen the self-scanners come in and things like that. Do you think they're at a disadvantage, or do you actually think it's now an advantage when it comes to those sort of people and the jobs that it's going to remove?
Stanford University did a study where they took call center customer service workers with AI versus without AI. And what they discovered is that anyone who was in their first 9 months of the job and were essentially low skilled, they jumped straight to a proficient first year worker who had essentially 1 year worth of experience under their belt. That was immediate, like almost within the first couple of weeks. It shortcut the first 12 months and got rid of it. Anyone who was in the top 10% of what they were doing, they were in the top 10% of customer success agents, it essentially didn't speed them up, it didn't give them any great benefit. So one of the things with AI is that it is an incredible tool for making you slightly above average. So for example, I have no law degree, right? I've never been a lawyer, I've never trained as a lawyer, but AI can actually help me to become about an average lawyer. I'm not saying I'll be graded as a lawyer, but I can fast track. I can draft contracts, I can find loopholes. Provided I roughly speaking know what it is that I'm looking for, I'm essentially a general purpose lawyer. So it's making me average at anything. Believe it or not, I'm kind of an average doctor. I can put a bunch of symptoms in, out comes the medications that would go with that. Like a farmer in rural Africa now has access to an average GP in their pocket. Is it the world's best GP? Absolutely not.
If you can't afford a PT, let's say you're a sports, you're trying to be a footballer.
Yep.
You can't afford a lot of footballers, they have children, they don't know the fitness plans, they don't know how to get that. They can upload it now.
Yep.
And they get all of that back. And it's actually lowering the gap between the more wealthy and those who come from a lot less.
Yeah, look, if someone works at Tesco, your job is to use AI to get the hell out of that role. Your job is to basically say, this thing has been dropped from heaven. phone to save my life from stacking shelves at Tesco. So crack on with it. You can now speak every language, you can code, you can do marketing, you can do all sorts of stuff. And like with a little bit of innovation, a little bit of effort, you can now pick up 3 or 4 clients.
And do you think that AI is going to be something they're going to have to start teaching in schools and things like that to really get everyone proficient in it?
Yeah, look, the whole school system's going to have to radically change. So it'll take time. When the Industrial Revolution kicked in, it was around the late 1700s, early 1800s. We had a 50-year Engels pause. And then the mid-1800s, we formalized the new schooling system, which is essentially the schooling system we have today. If you were to look at a school classroom set up in 1860 versus 1960 versus today, it's actually hardly anything's all that much different. You would see kids doing times tables, phonics, a blackboard has been replaced by a whiteboard, maybe a digital whiteboard, but ultimately it's a bunch of kids sitting in rows doing phonics, doing basic mathematics. It's the same sort of stuff. We're going into a world where the fundamental nature of how people live and work is going to radically change. We're going to need a new school system.
But do you think that can negatively affect like the youngsters who don't really have to learn anything anymore? They don't need to learn about the history of the UK. They don't need to learn about what happened in the wars because they can just search it in an instance and have context when they're making things.
If you were born into the royal family and you were next in line for the throne and you basically had an army of tutors and advisors and researchers at your disposal, and now anything you want to know about, you can learn about it on the spot, and that's how you were brought up. Does that make you dumber and less of a person, and does it make you unable to function and unable to lead? Or does it actually make you a different type of leader, a different type of person who you've grown up with unbelievable resources around you, and now you become very adequate at commanding resources? You know, Queen Elizabeth, that's how she was brought up. So she was tutored one-on-one, and she had, if she wanted to know about Stoicism, they would go and find all the books on Stoicism and they'd teach her about that. And if she wanted to know about French Revolution, they could go and find all of the stuff about that, and they bring someone in to just to tell her about that. She became a very resourceful leader because of that. The number one thing that makes kids left behind now is belligerently teaching them the old Industrial Revolution system in the age of AI.
The next stage of AI is probably to take it out of workforce and into actually humans' life, around the house, things like that. Asking questions of, mum and dad are out, how do I turn the dishwasher on? Things like that. And I had a conversation about this the other day, and the more that the kids then grow up with it, we're going to be dinosaurs. Even my generation can be dinosaurs compared to what 12, 13, 14-year-olds, because they pick things up so much quicker. And I think the real concern for some is that it's going to cause laziness, but you don't see it like that.
I think it'll cause hyper-resourcefulness. Now, sometimes hyper-resourcefulness looks like laziness to someone who's obsessed with work. So, for example, if someone delegates 100 things to 100 people and then sits on the couch, it looks like they're lazy, but actually they're hyper-resourceful because they've just delegated 100 things to 100 people.
So do you think that what we could potentially have is, obviously you've had PAs, C-suite people. Do you think humans are going to have that? Yeah. Where they wake up in the morning, their Whoop stat says to their nutritionist, right, you need to eat this today. This is the workout. But do you think it's going to become very normal for just everyone to...
become extremely normal, that you have a relationship with your AI. Your AI gets persistent memory and gets to know everything about you. It picks up on little things like it says, you used to go to bed at 11 o'clock and now you're going to bed at after midnight. It's not good for you. I've had a look at your data coming in from Whoop, and it seems like you've been dealing with a lot of stress lately.
It's going to be crazy, because even now, I think the big difference I've seen in AI over the last even 5 to 6 months is it's gone from read only. I call it read only to now write, where it's like before it's, can you read this and give me the information? Now it's like, don't even tell me. Like if our follow-up process now from our sales calls, it comes in, it reads my conversation, it sends me notes. It's like, Mitch, you did a really good job here. What were you doing down here? Like, you took this off track. I don't even have to approve it now. It'll go and do the follow-up, and if they don't come back, it will follow up again, follow up again. It's going to get to the stage where you don't have to, you've got an anniversary coming up, and it's like, don't worry, I've ordered it. Her favourite flowers are on the way, chocolates are on. I've done all of it. Here's your credit card.
That's it.
And I think that can only be a good thing.
As someone myself who's had an assistant for 25 years, I can't imagine life without having an assistant. I often think so many people would probably have a breakthrough moment if they just had someone helping them, if they just had an assistant with stuff. enough, because I've always had that, if a pair of aliens were floating above Earth and they were looking down at Earth and they said, look, for the last 10,000 years, these guys have spent most of their time in the soil and farming and trying to eat and trying to produce enough food just to survive. And then they fought a number of wars and they were trying to make enough physical products. They've now hit a point where they can make all the stuff that anyone could want. They can make all the food that anyone can want. And they've just hit a point where they've synthesized all learnings and they've synthesized all intelligence and they've created an interface that allows anyone anywhere to freely access all information that's ever been produced on the planet in a really intelligent, intuitive way. Is that going to be a bad thing for humanity or a good thing for humanity? I think the aliens, if they had to take a bet, they'd say it's probably going to be good.
Or eventually terrible, but at the moment, obviously, we're going to be on that.
I would say initially terrible and eventually good. And then the initially terrible part is just purely and simply, humans don't like change. We cling to the past. I've seen enough of these changes to see exactly the same things always being said. Rock and roll will destroy the kids, and magazines will destroy the kids, and going to the movies will destroy the kids, and having access to internet will destroy the kids, and all of that sort of stuff. And you can always find examples where it has been a bad thing. I cannot see a scenario where giving people access to intelligence and assistance, but I do think it'll be a very different thing. Life will be different.
And then just to conclude, if you got someone watching this, they've never played around with AI, what would you suggest they start with? Would it be just go into ChatGPT, put some information about yourself?
ChatGPT has now fallen behind, and maybe that'll change by the time this is out, because 3 months is a long time in AI time. But at the moment, Claude is miles ahead. Give it all of your hardest problems. Talk to it as though you're talking to a mentor. Tell it anything at all that is going on in your life. Give it the most difficult possible things that you can imagine. You could say, I need a job. I live in this particular town in England, and I want to work directly for an award-winning entrepreneur who lives locally, who's won an award, and it'll give you a list of 10.
And just to link it then back to business, it could almost be the same thing, where you're just like, if you want to emulate, if you want to be someone, let's say that I wanted to grow my business like you've done yours, you can now go to it and say, look, can you just go and download all of Daniel Priestley's YouTube videos? And could you then have a look what I'm doing? What would he do? So instead of me paying you for mentorship, I can't afford you to, have the human side of it, but I'll have your YouTube videos contextualized to me.
There was a time when I was a little kid where getting a business book was a big deal, because there wasn't really a business book section of the bookstore in most cases. There was a tiny section. So getting certain business books, you kind of had to order them in from specialty booksellers. For me, I didn't grow up in a big city. You had to go to Brisbane to then get to the big bookstore and find a bookstore. And then there was these cassette tapes. And the cassette tapes were a recording of a business seminar that someone had given. People used to join Amway to get cassette tapes, all right? They didn't want to sell Amway, they just wanted access to the cassette tapes. And then freely available podcasts and YouTube videos. And now AI, act as my mentor, act as...
Be Daniel Priestley.
Be Daniel
Priestley. Look at me and
right?
look at my life. I'm going to be Daniel Priestley. And look at that and be my fitness coach.
Yeah.
And following those.
Wild.
Yeah. Well, I, for one, am very, very excited about the future of AI. Thank you very much for that conversation. I hope you learned something. And if you want to learn more, then just click the subscribe button and we will be bringing many more videos on this topic. Thank you.